I got into what I thought was my Uber. I was very wrong. That line has been stuck in my head for months. It sounds almost dumb when you say it out loud, but the moment the door shut and the car pulled away, something felt wrong. Not dramatic, not obvious, just wrong enough that my body reacted before my brain understood what was happening. And that tiny shift, the kind you can miss if you're tired or distracted, can be the difference between getting home and disappearing. Tonight, I'm sharing 6 true Uber horror stories. Real people who trusted the app, trusted the routine, trusted the moment, and found themselves sitting next to someone who was not the driver they expected. Each story ends differently, but every single one teaches a rule, one that might actually save you one day. So, if you want to learn from the mistakes they survived, stay with me. And if you want more true safety stories every week, make sure you subscribe now. 1. It was late. I had been out drinking with friends and I was half laughing through my phone, trying to get my GPS to stop wobbling as I waited by the curb. The app showed my ride arriving in 2 minutes. The headlights rolled up, the car stopped, a guy in his 30s leaned over and asked if I was heading to Elm and 3rd. He'd said my name and the ride details right. He sounded normal. I could see the silhouette of a man in the driver's seat. The car door shut behind me, and something in the click made my stomach drop. The radio was low, too low, and the car smell wasn't the faint eucalyptus most Ubers have. It was muskier. He started driving, and instead of going straight onto the avenue, he took a turn that felt wrong. I checked my phone. My app map still showed the little car icon exactly where I was, only my phone had a ring of buffering at the top, and the GPS was slower than the car. He lit a cigarette, then another. The light from it inked his face in orange. He began asking me questions I didn't expect: where I worked, who I lived with, if I was alone. I answered with little monosyllables, trying to keep my voice steady. The more he asked, the colder I got. At some point, he pulled a small bag out of his coat. He opened it like it was nothing, and a crystalline smell hit me. My head felt fuzzy in the way that makes you suddenly realize how exposed you are. I told him I was tired and asked if he could go the normal way. He laughed and said, "Relax, babe. I know what I'm doing." I called 911, not because I thought that would fix everything in the moment, because I was scared that calling the police would blow something up and make him angrier. I needed someone else to know where I was. So I thumbed the call button and kept it quiet. When the dispatcher answered, I whispered. I didn't say, "I'm in an Uber with a drug dealer," or anything that would make my voice crack. I said, "I'm in a car and I need help. I'm at Elm and 3rd. Please stay on the line." What the dispatcher taught me in that breathless, hush-hush way they speak is what saved me. Keep the operator on the line and don't advertise what you're doing. Give them a low-key code. She repeated back numbers and asked simple questions. Was I hurt? Could the car stop? She said, "If anything changes, tell me the color of the car." And I recited the color of his jacket instead because it was right in front of me. She told me to keep my face visible to the camera and make noise if I needed to. I kept the call soft but open so the line stayed live. He kept driving. The route zigged into a quieter stretch, and I remember the engine's sound changing as if he were trying to drown out his radio and my breathing at the same time. I tried to pull the door handle. Automatic locks clicked. I realized then the doors were locked. Panic folded over me like lead. The dispatcher said they had units nearby and that officers were on the way. She told me to say one phrase if things turned dangerous, just one word to let her know I needed them to force a move: coffee. She told me to shout it if I needed the cops to treat it as an emergency. It felt strange, but it also felt like a lifeline. When we hit a stretch of road with more traffic, he slowed and then signaled to take a side street. I mouthed a silent no and pretended to check my messages. He took the street anyway. I laughed at a joke he made, trying to sound normal, something I now know people do because fear makes you want to smooth things over, even as you calculate escape. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend. She had seen my live location and messaged, "Call me now if anything's wrong." I thumbed back, "It's okay, I'm fine," which was both true and not true. A squad car's siren cut through the quiet of that side street like a blade. The driver cursed and swore, he slammed his foot down, tires squealed, and then he pulled over. 2 officers stepped out and ordered him to keep his hands visible. They checked the car, they asked me questions. I sat there shaking like a dog in a storm. I later learned from the officers that the man had a history of violent convictions. It's a detail that still doesn't settle well in my chest because it means my being a bit buzzed and trusting almost cost me more than a ride home. What I keep from that night, the dispatcher gave me a code and a reason to stay breathing. The line with 911 was the single most stabilizing thing I had. If you flatten the scare down to a takeaway, keep the emergency line open, don't announce every move, and when you can, verify the driver and the license plate before you get in. Those checks are small, but they buy you time. When you feel that first flip of unease, act on it. You don't owe politeness your life. That one ended with sirens. The next one didn't go that smoothly. 2. This one happened to me on a night when I felt like I was floating between being tipsy and sober. The app said driver Ed. Ed looked friendly in his profile photo, older than me, with a soft smile. I waited under a porch light, the kind that hums and makes everything seem a size smaller. A dark sedan rolled up, and a guy, he called himself Ed, introduced himself casually. He was chatty in a way that should have felt normal. We started off in the right direction, but he kept asking questions that felt invasive, like, "So, you're single?" and "What are you doing out alone so late?" The tone dug at me. He began to veer. We took a business parking lot instead of the main street. He turned the music up, too loud, and then leaned over, closer than a driver should, and said something like, "I bet you're not the kind of girl who says no." I tried to laugh it off. I told him my boyfriend's name, loud enough so anyone who passed by could hear. I said, "My boyfriend Marcus is waiting at home. He knows I'm on my way." The name sounded manufactured, and it worked. His face closed like a book when I said it. He didn't ask for the boyfriend's number. He didn't press. He drove the rest of the way more standoffish. When I got home, I checked the app profile against the man behind the wheel. Their faces didn't match. The man in the app was older, with a distinct scar on his eyebrow. The driver who'd driven me had none of those features. I felt dirty more than anything, like someone had borrowed my trust and put it back after using it. I filed a report in the app. A few days later, I sat on the couch and stared at the profile photo again and thought, what if I'd gotten in and he wasn't as easy to intimidate? It was a small thing, my saying Marcus's name, but it made a huge difference that night. The lesson is simple and blunt. Always check the driver's photo and the license plate before you get in. Say the name of the driver out loud to yourself, Driver Ed, and match it to the person at your door. If something seems off, step back, cancel, and wait for the next car. And if it turns scary, tell someone who can change the odds for you. Say a partner's name out loud. Mention that someone is waiting, or make the ride feel watched. I thought I'd learned my lesson. Then I got pregnant and had to be even more careful. 3. I was in my 3rd trimester, the kind of tired that makes your bones feel pre-exhausted. My feet swelled. Getting into a car felt like a logistical operation. I ordered a ride and tried to be exact about the pickup spot. The app said we'd arrive in 4 minutes. The car stopped, I hopped in, and everything felt the way it always had. Soft upholstery, a polite hello. But the first red flag was the phone on the dash. It was turned face down on the console, dark. When you rely on rideshare, you get used to a certain choreography. The driver's eyes check your app, the phone shows the route, the navigation voice orders left and right. This time, none of that choreography existed. He said he knew the way. For 20 minutes, the GPS on my phone showed us heading somewhere vaguely toward my destination, but then zigging off to side streets I didn't recognize. I asked, politely, "Aren't we supposed to turn on 3rd?" He said, "Trust me, it's faster this way." At first, I told myself I was tired and irrational. Then we started to go down narrower roads, and I felt the car take corners like it was trying to shake something off. I texted my sister the live location. She wrote back, "Are you okay?" I typed, "We're fine." That lie cost me nothing but my sleep for the next week. We pulled into a darker area, near warehouses and a stretch of houses with no trespassing signs. He slammed the brakes and turned to me with a look I had only seen in old crime shows. "Cops been following me," he said. "You don't need to freak out." I don't know why that line made me angrier than scared. Maybe anger felt better than helplessness. I stood up and said, loud enough for the dash phone to be able to hear, "No, turn the car around. I'm getting out." He laughed, the kind of laugh people make when they thinly mask surprise. He obeyed and headed back toward the main road. I watched his hands on the wheel, and every time he glanced at his phone, the screen stayed dark. I stepped out at a light. I asked him to stop a block earlier than our actual destination, anything so I wasn't exiting into an empty street. I shouted to the bus stop across the way that I needed help finding the bus schedule, and people looked. Later, when I told my midwife and friends, they repeated something that has become a rule for me. Always have someone watching your ride when you're pregnant. Always share your live location, and if the driver refuses to show navigation or turns off their phone screen, tell them to turn it on. If they don't, get out at a light or stop with people around. I don't tell that story to scare other pregnant women. I tell it because the difference between phrases like, "It's faster this way," and "We're going somewhere else" is measurable, and a single sentence like, "Stop the car," can be the decisive one. He dropped me off close to my place. I hugged a stranger who lit a cigarette by the building like he was old enough to have learned not to ask too many questions. The driver drove off. I reported the ride and told the app that the driver's screen looked off and he deviated from the route. The app showed a flag on the ride in the history, but nothing else was sent to me beyond the canned, "We're looking into it." I kept the number of the police dispatcher in my phone for months afterward. 3 stories, 3 ways of feeling certain and then not. The same thread ran through all of them, a mismatch between what's on my phone and what was happening in front of me. An app says a man is one person, the man in my doorway is another. A profile photo promises a stranger who will leave me alone. Someone else slides into my space. Little checks, matching a face to a photo, checking that the navigation is live and visible, keeping an emergency line open, are tiny, and they save so much weight. If you think these were close calls, brace yourself, because the next 2 involve a driver who treated the front seat like a trap, and another where a dark screen became proof he wasn't using the app at all. But before that, a quick rule I wish I'd had from the start. When something feels off, start to make noise. Even small noise, texting a friend, mentioning the name of someone waiting for you, can change the energy in a car. I want to pause on one practical detail that threads through all 3 of these: live location sharing. All 3 of us had a friend who could see the ride as it moved. In the first story, my friend saw the live pin and called me. In the second, I shouted my partner's name and made it feel like someone else was watching. In the third, my sister could track the dark route. Live location doesn't stop something bad from starting, but it either speeds the intervention or gives you an anchor to make decisions with less fear of being alone. And another thing, your body will tell you when to be loud. In the second story, saying the boyfriend's name made a predator step back. In the third, saying stop and stepping out in light kept me from spending the night somewhere unsafe. Loudness is not rude when it could keep you breathing. That said, these checks are not guarantees. They reduce risk, not eliminate it. Always follow your instincts, and, when possible, don't ride alone late at night. But I know that's not realistic for everyone. People who work nights, people who live far from transit, students who take a last bus home. So let's be practical. Verify the driver photo and license plate, keep your phone charged, share your location, keep 911 dialed if you're afraid. Small habits that make getting into a car feel less like a roll of the dice. I could end these 3 with a shrug and say, "It worked out," which feels false. Surviving doesn't erase what happens inside you afterwards. The sleep that won't come, the constant checking of every car that stops by your building. The women in these stories all felt a kind of shame, Not because they did anything wrong, but because they've been taught to be so small in public. That shame is not yours to carry. The mistake companies make is trying to solve the human hazard with technology and assuming technology can be perfect. Apps help, but people are the ones who keep each other safe. I had planned to leave the next story for later, but I want to give you the short version because it ties into every single thing we've talked about so far. A friend of mine once climbed into the front seat because she thought the driver asked her to. That's another red flag, and it became a direct line to harassment. Another time, my cousin and her boyfriend stared down a driver who'd turned his phone dark and made wrong turns. His panic at being caught was the thing that made him drive them back. And there was the 19-year-old we all worry about, who ended up near an empty new development with the engine off, who had to run and hide while her family watched her dot on the map. These are stories I'm going to tell, in detail, next, because they contain the same truth. The person behind the wheel can be someone else entirely. But the ways people escaped are not magic. They were small, resourceful acts that you can practice. For now, hold on to 3 things. Verify, share, and make noise. Verify the driver and the plate before you step in. Share your live location and ETA. Make noise. Say someone's name, call someone, keep 911 on a soft line if you're scared. These things didn't solve everything for everyone, but they shifted the odds enough to matter. If that sounds like a lot to remember, it is. But think of them as a chain of tiny clicks. Check the profile, say the driver's name, keep your phone ready. If even one of those clicks is missing when you feel wrong, treat it like a weak link. Replace it before the chain breaks. Up next, the night the driver insisted I sit in the front seat, and the one where a dark phone screen became the single clearest sign someone wasn't using the app. If you think the first 3 were unsettling, the next ones will show you how small moments, an asked-for front seat, a turned-off navigation, a driver who panics when confronted, can become the turning point between a story that ends with relief and one that ends with a call to the police. I want to tell those last 3 in full, because they each end with a different kind of lesson. But before I get into them, remember this. None of the people in these stories was stupid or careless. They were tired, busy, trusting. They made small choices in the moment that to them felt reasonable. The point of sharing these is not to say you should have, but to show what tiny, practical habits you can adopt to change the outcome next time. Now, let's talk about the front seat pressure. 4. The driver asked me to sit in the front. It was a Friday after work thing. Cheap dinner, a few laughs, the kind of night where you tell yourself, you'll be fine. I wasn't drunk, I was tired and glad the night had wrapped. When my ride arrived, the man at the wheel opened the back door and then casually said, "Mind coming up front, it's easier to talk." He had that soft voice people use when they want something to feel normal. I hesitated. I remember the small incandescent porch light catching him in a way that made him seem familiar. He smiled and reached for something in the glove box. When I slid into the front seat, the space felt wrong, too close, too exposed. He didn't put the seatbelt on for me. He asked me why I didn't want children, then launched into a story about his nephew and fertility clinics like it was a conversation anyone would have with a stranger. A driver insisting you sit in the front is a pressure move. It removes your escape routes. It makes it harder to lock your door or to slip out without being noticed. The man kept inching his questions toward me: where I lived, what I did, whether I lived alone. He laughed when I tried to keep it light. At one point, I reached for my phone to pretend to look up directions, and he blocked my arm gently, just enough that the gesture landed in my chest like a warning. I didn't want to over-dramatize it, and part of me still thought maybe he was being friendly. But something in my stomach said, "Don't be the last polite thing you are tonight." I texted my cousin the restaurant name and the ETA out loud, so it wasn't just a message. "Tell Jamie I'm at Roslyn's, ride ETA 5 minutes." I kept my voice steady and asked him to confirm the address for me, questions that sounded helpful but also put information into the room. Saying the place and the name made the car feel watched. When we neared my block, a city bus idled near the corner, and I told him, "Stop at the light. I need to grab something from the curb." I unbuckled while he was focused on traffic. As soon as the door creaked, I slid out and walked fast toward the bus stop where people were waiting. He didn't follow. He called after me in a voice that sounded like it could have been apologetic. I didn't look back until I reached the bus's back door, and a man on a bench gave me a quiet nod. Why that worked may feel like a trick, saying the restaurant and the ETA put witnesses in the story. Moving into public visibility and choosing the side with people made my exit easier. I could have straight up refused the front seat when he asked, and if someone tells you to avoid the front, it's for a reason. But the front seat pressure is subtle. It can feel like it's normal to accept a suggestion from someone steering you through a dark street. What kept me breathing was naming something out loud so other people existed in my narrative. The takeaway from that night is specific. Never, ever feel obligated to sit in the front. If a driver asks, step back and say no. If you already sat and something feels off, create witnesses. Say the name of the restaurant, the time someone expects you, or loudly text someone where you are. Visibility changes a person's risk calculus. That phrase, "my cousin knows I'm here," mattered more than I understood that night. If you hear one small rule from this, let it be this: avoid the front seat, unless there is a safety reason to use it. And if you do end up there, keep the conversation brief, keep your phone in hand, and make the ride feel observed. That wasn't the only time a dark phone screen told me everything I needed to know. 5. We were almost home when I noticed the screen. My boyfriend and I had been out together, date night, nothing wild, and the car had an even hum to it at first. He showed the driver's name on his phone and checked the license plate, all standard. Then things slipped sideways. The driver took a turn we expected him not to. At first we shrugged it off because cities have odd one-way rules. Then he missed another turn. Petite course corrections became a pattern. Each wrong turn felt like a pebble in the shoe of my trust. What clinched it was when I glimpsed the dashboard phone and saw it dark. Not asleep, not face down, not displaying the app, just black and lifeless as if it were a prop. My boyfriend, who was on the phone with his mother, tightened his voice and asked the driver, "Are you using navigation?" The driver stammered, then said he knew the way. My boyfriend asked again. The driver made a comment and tried to laugh it off. I pulled my phone out and hit live location sharing. When the next wrong turn happened, my boyfriend reached across, opened the front passenger door slightly, and said something steady and low he knew would sound like a firm, not violent confrontation. He asked the driver to stop and explain. The driver went quiet, and then suddenly, like someone realizing they'd been caught, he slammed the car into reverse and took us back toward the route we originally expected. The driver panicked. The air in the car changed. He told us, quickly and in an arched tone, that he'd made a mistake and got flustered. We made him pull over at a lit intersection. We both stepped out and walked into a deli to call an Uber again and to check the license plate with the app. Seeing a dark phone screen is often the clearest signal a driver isn't running the ride on the app. The navigation should be visible, the voice should be guiding turns, the driver's attention should occasionally flick to the route. When none of that is happening, you are riding with someone who might be improvising. In our case, having a partner there who could confront the situation without panic changed everything. The confrontation didn't have to be violent to work. It only had to be firm enough to make the driver realize his cover was blown. The lesson here is practical. Always scan for an active app screen on the dash or a navigation display that matches the route you expect. If you see nothing, ask a question that forces a visible reaction. Can you show me the route? Or ask to pull over at a public place. If you're not with a partner, call someone and keep them on the line while you speak to the driver or until you reach a crowded area. You don't need to pit your courage against someone alone. You need to create witnesses. That one ended without sirens, but it left me with a stubborn suspicion I still carry when I see a dark phone in a ride. 6. The 19-year-old was me, only younger. I was 19 and in college. The kind of night where your backpack held textbooks and your keys were a joke of tangled ribbons. I didn't have a card from my dorm yet that worked at the back gate, so I relied on a roommate who kept an extra key under her mattress. That night, my roommate wasn't answering her phone. My account on the rideshare app was new, and I felt like I was dancing between independence and cluelessness.
I waited under new construction lights that made the street feel like a stage set. The car arrived and the man behind the wheel asked where I needed to go. He took my address and repeated it. We pulled away. It was silent at first. Then he made a turn that wasn't on the straight line home. I pointed at the app, my route blinking, and he laughed and said, "I know a faster way." We moved into a stretch where new developments were half built, their show home lights off and their lawns a dust of gravel. The man turned off the engine and the car sank into an odd silence. He said something to me that I can't be precise about now without feeling the cold. My body went into do not think mode. The door was unlocked. I bolted. I ran to a row of orange safety fences where some equipment sat, and I hid behind a large utility box. I curled up small and tried to make myself invisible. I could hear him step out of the car. I could hear the clink of his shoes on gravel as he walked away. Then the distant shuffle as he returned to his vehicle. I kept my phone open and my family's eyes on me via live location. My mother, who had been watching the dot on the map, called me and I whispered the location while she called the police. My sister texted, "Are you okay? Stay on the line." My family tracked the pin inch by inch like a string attached to my chest. After what felt like both an eternity and a minute, a neighbor in a work truck drove by and saw me crouched behind the utility box. He called out, and then, as if deciding to act because a woman was trembling in the dark, he parked and came over. I jumped out and ran to him like a magnet. He dialed 911 with me on speaker and stayed until uniformed officers arrived. I sat shaking with the headlights on me, my knees giving under my weight. Later, the app showed a drop-off at a place 50 yards from where the man had actually stopped. The ride history showed a different ending than the map my family had watched. When I reported it, the platform eventually acknowledged the report, but there was no immediate comfort in canned messages. The emotional aftershocks, insomnia, a flinch whenever a car slowed by my dorm, lasted. But what saved me that night was the live location and the fact that someone was watching the dot move. I bolted without finesse. I hid until a stranger intervened. I got rescued by ordinary people and the vigilance of my family. The takeaway is painfully clear. If you're young or in a situation where you don't have easy access back into your space, have backup plans.
Carry a little credit on your phone for emergency calls if you rely on data-only devices. Keep a spare set of keys somewhere safe that doesn't rely on a roommate's availability. Share live location and tell someone the exact building name or the sign on the street. Trust your gut and be prepared to run toward people and light. Running can feel terrifying, but I look back and feel like running was the only rational option. What I don't say in that story is that I was stupid. I wasn't. I was a kid learning how the world matches the threats in it. I was lucky because I had people who watched the dot and because a neighbor saw and stopped. But luck isn't something to bank on. Systems, apps, reporting features help when they are used alongside human eyes. Synthesis. 6 stories, 6 different endings. Different choices, but overlapping red flags. If you listen to them together, they make a pattern. Mismatched faces and profile photos, dark or absent navigation screens, requests to change seating that reduce escape options, deviations from expected routes, and drivers who escalate when confronted. The fix isn't glamorous. It's a set of small, repeatable actions that make a ride less like a roll of the dice. The consistent moves that saved the people in these stories were simple: verify, share, and make noise. Verify. Match the driver's photo to the person at the car and check the license plate before you get in. Ask the driver to confirm the name on the app. If the details don't match, cancel and wait for the next ride. Look for the app's navigation on the dash. If it's off, that's a red flag. Share. Use live location sharing with a trusted contact. Send a screenshot of the app showing the driver's name and plate if you feel safe doing so. If you're traveling alone, keep someone on the line. A human who can see your dot or hear your voice reduces the power imbalance. Make noise. Say the name of someone expecting you, call someone and keep them listening, and if you're scared, call 911 and stay on the line. Use a word or phrase you and the dispatcher agree on if you need silent confirmation. Loudness isn't rude when your safety is at stake. A short, practical checklist to carry in your head. 1. Before you step toward the car, match the driver's photo and confirm the plate. If it doesn't match, cancel. 2. Share your live location and ETA with someone who will check the dot as the ride moves. 3. Keep your phone charged and have emergency credit if you rely on data-only access. 4. Avoid the front seat, stay in the back when possible, and keep doors locked. 5. If the driver turns off navigation or the phone looks dark, ask them to turn it on. If they refuse, pull over in a public place and get out. 6. If you feel threatened, call 911 and stay on the line. Use discreet code words if that helps you stay safe without escalating.
7. After the ride, check your trip history. If the drop-off or driver doesn't match what happened, report it and screenshot everything you can. Reporting and aftercare. If you experience any of these things, you don't have to handle the aftermath alone. Report the ride through the app and include screenshots if you have them. Call the police if you feel in danger or if a crime has occurred. Tell someone you trust about the experience: friends, family, a counselor. The emotional fallout is real. Survivors often feel shame or a desire to minimize what happened. That shame is misplaced. The right response is to seek support, log what you remember while it's fresh, and use the app's reporting tools to create a record. Companies will sometimes issue refunds or send automated replies. Those actions may feel small compared to what you experienced. Still, reporting matters because it's part of creating a record that could be useful later for investigations or for patterns that force policy changes. Do what you can and don't let uncertainty about an outcome keep you from filing a report. Final thoughts. When I tell these stories, people often say, "I would never get into a car like that." The truth is, most of us didn't set out to be in those cars. We were tired, we were trusting, we were in the rhythm of living. These stories are not warnings that the world is inherently malevolent. They're reminders that a few small checks can make life safer. If you take away one thing from these 6 accounts, let it be this: small rituals reduce risk. Match the photo. Share your dot. Make noise. Keep 911 as an active option, not a last resort. Carry a little extra battery or a card for calls. Make it visible when you feel watched. Say someone's name, shout the restaurant, or text a friend. Those moves won't stop every bad thing, but they often change the moment enough to open a window. And if you've lived through something like this, you don't have to carry it alone. Talk to someone. Report the ride. Keep whatever evidence you can: screenshots, times, the license plate. Seek whatever support you need to feel safe again. Check the pinned description for a quick, printable checklist and links to resources for reporting unsafe rides. If this resonated with you, share it with a friend. One small share could save someone else from a story like these.